I feel like a lot of my peers don't remember when their YouTube channel made $1 for the first time. Like, that's not something that they like think about often. And I think about that. It's like one of my first happy memories.
Welcome back to Puppeteers. We're your hosts, Adam Krutinger
and Cameron Garrity.
And today we have Daniel Becker on the show. Welcome to the show, Dan.
Woo!
Whoa, the energy level pre-recording to recording has just went through the roof. I did not know. Holy smokes.
You haven't seen
guys,
enough episodes.
The viewers at home have no idea. It was like watching like a wrestler about to go on like WWE. He was like, let's pump it up. Hey guys, it's the podcast. What's going on? I'm Adam.
We always describe it to people as like starting a lawnmower. You got to get a couple rips on that cord.
You know what though? I just got one of those 40-volt wireless battery weed whackers, and I'm never going back, guys. No mixing oil and gas anymore.
Dude, I have it too. I have it too. It's amazing.
It's so good. And then I also have a little small dog yard, so we got the battery-operated electric wireless push mower, and it's like, what? It's so great.
Cool.
Anyway.
Well,
so this podcast is about tools that have gasoline in them. Welcome to Talking About Gas Tools.
Speaking of
Welcome
gas tools,
to Talking About Gas Tools.
Before we get too far into it, I'll just introduce you for people who maybe don't know. So Daniel Becker is a puppeteer and one of the founders of the Getting Felt Up podcast, or as Adam calls it, the Dan and Nate Puppet Podcast. And you have to say the whole podcast name. Getting Felt Up, a Puppetry Podcast with Dan and Nate. That makes it safe to say. So Perfect.
because it delivers on the pun. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yes.
For sure.
Okay,
for
got
sure.
it.
And was also a member of John Tartaglia's ImagineOcean, and is kind of well known on the YouTubes and the internet things as Disney Dan. So Dan Becker, welcome to Puppeteers.
Hi guys.
Hi. Now, this is when we get into our NPR voices and it all. No.
Yeah. But Disney Dan, what are you doing now? What are you working on?
Wait. No, I'm sorry. Before we do that, so this is a little anecdote about us getting ready to have you come on the show. So I was listening to an episode of your podcast yesterday,
which is ridiculous to me. It's just this. That's the I understand that people watch Disney. I understand that people watch my YouTube channel. I get that. I get that it has broad appeal. The fact that people are still listening to our Nate Nice podcast is just bizarre to me.
No, it was a great show, and
it's charming show.
Really is. And so I was going through guests because I wanted to listen to one of your shows before we talked, and I just kind of picked out of nowhere. I picked the Stephanie DeBruzzo episode.
That one just went on.
Oh, it was great. It was great. But my favorite part, and this is you were a prophet. I don't know if you remember the intro to that show, but you guys were talking about different things. You had just done a show of, I think, Breakfast at Tiffany's, if that's right. And you had talked about you just built a cat puppet, and you said it was time for Cats, the musical, to make a comeback. And you said, I don't know when or I don't know how, but Cats the musical is going to come back in a real big way, and they're going to do something really crazy. It's not just going to be filming the Broadway musical. It's going to be something insane that gets everybody talking about it. And this was, 3 or 4 years ago that happened. And it was just absolutely, I was listening, I was walking my dogs, and I was just like, oh my gosh.
Listen, if anyone actually, the people who are still listening to
Universal
our podcast,
is losing all this money.
If you find great bits and great things, send them to me, and I will animate them in some way, and I'll post them somewhere. I'll do it. I will 100% do it.
You've got to put that back.
You really do.
Yeah, that's great. That's hysterical.
I'll take those clips out. I'll cut them up to make them PG because, this podcast is pretty clean. Getting Felt Up was not. Puppetry Podcast with Dan and Nate.
And I think that part was pretty clean.
Yeah.
But it was hysterical. And I was like, I have to bring this up with him tomorrow. So anyhow, back
great.
to the actual question of what you're up to now.
So, like, wait, were you guys listening? No, that's not what we're done talking. We could talk about that, but wait, I have more questions for you
Okay,
too.
okay.
Were you
Sure.
listening when we were doing it, like in real time?
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
I was not so much, and I think part of it was I would listen to it on like road trips, because if I'm listening to a podcast, I kind of need to be able to listen to it start to finish, and so I would sometimes listen to it on. They were long. So
Kevin
I think
Smith
that's
taught
why
us
it was
that.
good for you.
Yeah. I love long
too.
podcasts myself.
Because you
know,
would just put it on in the background.
I put it on in the background while I'm working, when I'm building puppets, when I'm prepping stuff, and so I just listen straight through. And I remember one thing that I thought was really, what showed me that yours had a wider appeal even for that show was I'd have it playing in the background, and Maria would be rolling over laughing too, overhearing it in the kitchen or something.
Really?
Thinking you guys are so funny. Oh yeah. I was like, wow, that's interesting. She doesn't usually like puppet stuff that much, other than performing that she's involved in.
Like, it's stupid, but like it means a lot to me that you guys listen to it. So thank you.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
Yeah, it was a lot
I'm
of fun.
sitting here
Loved it.
crying.
Loved it.
I had a rough day of
And
therapy
actually-
today. It was just we had some big emotional breakthroughs. Whew, that my therapist was crying, I was crying. We just and now you two are here. You're just like,
And I was gonna
Dan,
say we're
you
here
paved
for
the
part
road.
two.
You paved the road for art and
paved the
greatness and
road,
us. And I'm just like,
You guys really did. I mean, and
Yeah, and actually, it was part of the inspiration for this, definitely, because I remember I was like, I remember at one point I was building something. I was let me listen to some. I haven't listened to the Dan and Nate podcast in a while. Let me put it on. And I looked. I was like, oh, there hasn't been one for like a year. I'm like, oh, darn. It's like, and in the back of my head, it got me thinking. I'm like, well, there's got to be something. Maybe we should do something. That was part of the inspiration in a way.
oh wow, yeah, interesting. Yeah, I don't even know. There was like a Jim Henson Company podcast before us.
Yep.
Right.
And actually, let me say to that too. That also, because that's why I looked at Puppetry Podcasts, and I saw that yours hasn't been up in a year or so, and I saw that the Henson one was stale at that point as well. What wasn't making any? Yeah, hadn't made any new ones in a while. That was like,
and
Grant has
Grant
one.
does his,
Yeah,
which is great.
yeah, and
as well.
it is great. And I'm embarrassed to say I didn't know about it actually until after I had started this one, and you had known about it.
I had, yeah.
But I
But
didn't even
Muppet
realize it at that
Muppet
point.
Tough Pigs or someone has something kind of a podcast.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And just to be clear,
Yeah,
yeah,
and-
I wasn't inclling the
Muppet
Muppet
Cast.
podcast.
Yeah.
I wanted something
the Puppeteers,
wider
yeah.
to the art
Yeah,
form
and
rather than
and
just
so
being
I feel
Muppets.
like,
yeah.
if anything, we were the first ones to roll in and do what we did in the way that we did it.
Yeah.
In terms of in puppetry, and it's so weird. It's so weird because we're such a tiny community. You know what I mean? And I say we incredibly liberally because I don't consider myself in the puppet community much anymore. But yeah, it's wild. It's wild how. Anyway, thanks for. I'm glad that you guys. I'm glad that the $5 a month I still pay to keep it hosted is going to good use.
Good. Yeah. But again, feel free to join the Patreon. But anyway, so what are you working on now, Dan? I think that's the fourth time we keep getting distracted.
I'm just doing YouTube videos. Just my Disney Dan stuff at the moment is the main focus. I have a Lego. I have like 6 or 7 websites. One of them is the Lego website, which is probably the biggest like Lego gaming website. And so the new Star Wars game is going to be coming out soon. So I'll dive into that. But then otherwise, it's just been me doing YouTube stuff. Just this past Christmas, me and a bunch of other YouTubers got together for a thing called Charity Land and raised $20,000 for Give Kids the World Village, which is where all the critically ill kids go for Make-A-Wish to go down to Disney World and stuff. So that was the last big thing that kind of consumed my life. And now that I'm on the other side of that, I just recently put out a video with Figment and me at D23, kind of recapping that. And I have at any given time, probably 15 different videos projects in Final Cut, and I just randomly will go into one and work on it for a little bit until my ADHD sends me off somewhere else. So.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, wow. Yeah. Yeah, you've been having a lot of success with it. I know you on your main channel, the Disney Dan channel, you have, I think it's over 125,000 at this point. It's around there. I think probably a little higher. Yeah. Wow. That's what for that was kind of what was the launching point for that kind of made that become something? I'm guessing that it was maybe was it just your channel? And then it took off, and then you branded it as Disney Dan because you were doing mostly Disney stuff, or was it originally Disney Dan?
Back in the day, I was. This is crazy. I accidentally became Disney Dan. Essentially, is how it happened. I got into for my nephew's birthday like 5 or 6 years ago. I picked him up a box set, a starter set of Disney Infinity 2.0. With Merida and Stitch and a couple of other random characters, and gave it to him. And I was like, because he had a Wii U, and I'm like, I have a Wii U too, so I'll get it and we'll play together. We'll because it's a fun world building kind of Minecraft-esque type game, but it was Toys to Life. I don't know if either of you are familiar with it, but essentially Disney would sell little figures.
Yeah, you buy like little action
it's like
figure,
Skylanders,
and then
it's like Lego Dimensions. Little figures, you buy them, you put them on a portal, you can play with them in game. And so I kind of got into it, and I was like, oh, this is really fun. It's just a fun platformer, and I really love the art style of the game. It was gorgeous. It was just I just love the stylization of it. And I was like,
right.
And I thought it would be fun to just buy up a bunch of them and give him some for his birthday and give him some for Christmas. And every time I see him, I'd get him, throw him a character, and I'd have one, and we'd play and that kind of stuff. And so it was expensive to do. And I started deal hunting for Disney Infinity deals. I gathered a bunch of Disney Infinity deals and posted them on Reddit. I was like, hey, I'm doing this, so if you guys want it, on the Disney Infinity subreddit. And I was like, hey, here's all the deals I found this week. If you want to know where the deals are, here's where they are. Because you could be get 3 characters for $15 and nonsense like that. Someone had a Disney Infinity website, found me on the subreddit and asked if I would write those deal posts for his website every week. And he started paying me to do that. And he was there's a bizarre world of the internet, gentlemen, where people just a great example is there's a great mobile app called Disney Crossy Road. That a big game like that drops. Everyone loves the game. It's super popular. And so a bunch of dudes have the kind of idea that they go on then and make a website just full of SEO for Disney Crossy Roads, Disney Crossy Road cheats, Disney Crossy Road codes, Disney Crossy Road secret characters. They just fill this website full of all these keywords. They write up 20 or 30 articles, and then they fill it with ads and they just set it live and they just walk away from it and they never touch it again. And it's a gamble, but if you know how to do it, it's just your own time. And essentially, 1 out of every 10, the game gets huge and you built the website in time. And now suddenly, boom, you are making $500, $600, $700, $800 a month off of this website that you did nothing. You spent 3 days building. And then the ones that fail, wow, they even make $10, $15, $20 a week, And so you amass 40, 50, 60, 100 of these websites and you have a career. You have a life, You're making a healthy paycheck from AdSense every month, and you're just managing all these sites. And some of them you actually take care of and you fill with content. Like the person who owns Tough Pigs, they love Muppets. They're filling Tough Pigs with all the stuff. They have writers for it. Like me with my Lego website, I have 5 guys that write for me. I pay them to write for me, and they, and I don't make a ton of money off it. I have, the Lego site's the only popular one I have. But essentially, that's this business model. And the guy realized that it wasn't a mobile app. It was this massive platform, game. Like people were playing on Xbox. And just because it had a mobile app, he kind of falsely, dove into it. And so he wanted to sell the website. And I had put so much time into it. I was like, I wrote all these, it's been months I've been working on this. I built this up. This site's super popular and now you're going to sell it. And so I bought it for him for $600, $700. And It was the best decision because it had a YouTube channel. And I had built this YouTube. It just so happened that the month he decided to sell it was the month that I went out to D23. So this was 4 years ago. No, this was 6 years ago. This was 6 years ago. So I went out to D23. Oh. Wow, it was 6 years ago. That's a long time. And I got special access to Disney Infinity 3.0. No, it was 4 years. I don't know what it was. When Disney Infinity 3.0 came out, I got special early access to it. And I got to check out all the new characters and gameplay. And I just recorded a ton of stuff. And I uploaded it to the YouTube channel that this guy made for the website. And it started getting tons and tons of views. And so my channel started as a Disney Infinity channel. I was DisneyInfinityCodes.com. And the website's still up. I still probably make $30 a month off of it or something like that because people are still playing it. And I wrote guides. I just wrote those back in the day, every video game had a guide, like I'm sure you gentlemen know how video games work.
Oh yeah.
And they had those books and publishers Prima guides and stuff. They're all gone, and they're replaced by people like me who have brickstolife.com where I have guides for every Lego game now. Every new game, I write me and 3 guys write a full Prima guide to everything you can do in the game. It takes about a week and a half, and we do it. And we have but then Disney Infinity got canceled. It went down the tubes because of some crazy. I'm working on a project about that, so I'm pretty excited about that. And so it's like, okay, well, I at least have Lego Dimensions because I had the Lego. And then Lego Dimensions got canceled, and so it's like, well, what am I going to do? And at that time, I started just watching other YouTube and taking in what other creators were making, and I found this little subset of people who were diving into abandoned. Things, abandoned parks, abandoned, and then that kind of translated to finding a couple of YouTubers that kind of delve into the history of pop culture things, movie props that, were lost and found again, like the Death Star, the original Death Star that was a trash can in a strip club for 15 years until someone found it. They punched out the dish, the satellite dish, the actual weapon, there's a word for this. Cameron, what's the word?
Yeah.
The crater, the reflector dish, whatever.
Laser,
you know what I'm talking about. They just punched that out.
Sure.
They put it in.
Yeah.
They put it on
laser.
a globe stand, and people just threw trash in it like a theme park garbage can. and the thing cracked in half, and they would just take the garbage bag out and throw a new one in.
Oh my god!
And so I loved that, and I was like, you know what? I want to do that. So I had the idea of. I once saw a picture of the first Mickey that ever was in Disneyland, the first Mickey on opening day of Disneyland. And it's always stuck with me because it's one of the most horrifying things I've ever seen in terms of just, those
old costumes are frightening.
Turning over your childhood memories of something very innocent and turned into something very terrible. So it's like, this is interesting. I wonder what else he looked like. And I remember seeing different weird versions of Mickey. And so I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to make videos. So I just opened up iMovie and I essentially made a glorified PowerPoint about Mickey Mouse. I just found a bunch of pictures of Mickey Mouse through the years. I lined them all up. Each one was 4 seconds a piece, more or less. Just Ken Burns every one of them. And then did a subtle cross dissolve between each slide. I think I got fancy, and
Beautiful.
I put in one clip of opening day, the broadcast that they did on television.
The skate,
and then once I had this is so crazy to me. I don't even know how on earth I did this, but once I had the slideshow done, iMovie had this button that you could click right underneath the preview that was record, and you could just plug a microphone in and just record directly into iMovie. And so that's what I did. I just hit play and hit record, and I just went live for 25 minutes of just straight improv, and I just narrated it based off of all the research I did. I was like, just here's what happened. And it's the worst thing ever, and it has 3.5 million views on YouTube. So
oh my god!
The audio was not edited at all for that.
Nope.
The audio was not edited at all for that. Oh my god, you didn't do takes or that guy? I love that. I love that video. It's great. All that whole you created a series out of that with a bunch of the other costumes as well, which is brilliant. But it's everything about that video is so compelling. And I think the gravy on it though is you narrating it and your reactions to it and the way I don't know. That's what I loved about the podcast too. The way you do your gut laugh and stuff. Like it's so sincere and honest. And I think that's that is a big part of your success, I think.
5 or 6
so
wow. Videos were completely improv with a fully edited video done. Like I was dubbing it like a Godzilla movie. You understand? Like I was just I was standing in a dimly lit studio with a pin light on me, holding a headphone to my ear, like looking up at a screen and just talking and praying. And it would take me hours because I had to do one clean whole take. And I would like literally, it's crazy to think about how I did it now. And I'm starting to do it again. And it's driving me a little crazy, but I would live workshop all the jokes in my own head and deem if they were funny or not as I did run throughs. And slowly I would get the beats I wanted down. And then I would get caught up at like 8 minutes and then had to restart and try to regurgitate all the bits. But I would just and it got to a point where just my mouth would open and this stuff would come out and I would keep moving because that's just how I'm in therapy. It's great. Don't worry about me, guys. I'm okay.
Wow.
I'm okay.
So that was the first video. That was the first video that really took your channel off.
I was playing Disney Crossy Road and finding all this because I really loved the game. It was like a Disney Frogger. They still have it. They haven't updated it in forever, but it's a great game. They have a Haunted Mansion level that is it's a Haunted Mansion Frogger. It's the best. It's just the best. And so I loved it. And so I was just like, well, I might as well record myself playing it and unlocking all this stuff. And I did. And so and those videos got huge. And then there's random ones because the thing about Disney Infinity was that there were toys. It's a video game with toys. And so I would unbox them. Every figure I did an unboxing video on. I did unboxing videos on like little like discs that just had a picture on them, and people would watch them. And I remember I was ecstatic the day I started making like 10 cents a day. You know what I mean? Like when I got to the point where it's like making 10 cents a day, I was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
That's like $3 a month. And I'm just having fun. I'm just doing wacky stuff. And then it got to the day where I was making like $1 a day. And like videos were like, I could have cried when my first video got like 1,000 views. I was like, it got 1,000 views. I can't believe it. And then it was like, I got 5,000 views on this video. I can't. And it's my favorite thing about new creators that I feel like so many of my peers forget, and they don't like to, they don't, I don't know. I just full disclosure, don't trust anything I say. That said, I feel like a lot of my peers don't remember when their YouTube channel made $1 for the first time. Like that's not something that they like think about often. And I think about that. It's like one of my first happy memories. Guys, I'm in therapy. I promise you. Don't worry about me. Yeah. It's been a rough one, guys. It's been no, it's not. I'm great. I'm fine.
Yeah, I know it's funny you say that. You see that in actually like almost all art forms, people kind of over time lose touch with what got them started in it. Right. And that can work with any art form, anything at all, really. And sometimes people need that check, that reminder of about why they're doing it. And sometimes it starts off as just a hobby, then it turns into a business, but then it gets too businessy and loses why people loved it to begin with. So that's why you see a lot of channels that go up and then either plateau or even go down after a while. So you don't want to be one of those.
But yeah, I'm glad that you think. Oh, excuse me. I don't know why I decided. I have water here. I'm just gonna start drinking water. I can't be this gassy. I can't be like a guest on a podcast and constantly be like, you know what I mean? Like I can't. Like that's the worst. That's the worst. Anyway, I'm glad that you think that the podcasts and my commentary is silly.
No worries at all.
I have terrible, and I don't talk about this a lot. And I'm about to start a podcast, and it's going to be about the same caliber in terms of like the Getting Felt Up Puppetry Podcast in terms of like, it's going to be more of a PG-13 kind of thing, in that, people will say bad words, that kind of stuff. But I just want to talk about what it's like to be a creator. And I think that one of the things that comedians do so brilliantly is podcasting. Beyond what, and I don't think anyone was doing this intentionally, but people were like, I love this comedian. I just want to hear him talk. I want to hear, the silly things they say to their friends. And then it turned into, I'm a fan of the comedy, but now I'm also a fan of the relationship of these comedians. You know what I mean? I'm a fan. It's like, sure, everyone loves the Golden Girls episodes where, Betty White's doing some wacky stuff on her own, but then when they all get back together, everyone loves those parts. And the grandma's like, wacky, and, everyone loves that and so the comedians ended up forming this network of this little bubble of podcasts, and they all go in each other's podcasts and they all talk and, they all talk terribly about each other, but they all do it in jest because they're comedians, they're entertainers, and you can't take yourself too seriously or you'll be done if you do. And it's just this beautiful, incredible thing. And so I'm going to start a podcast where I start talking about just kind of like what it's like to be a creator, what it's like to make videos, what it's like to, make that Figment puppet. I want to have you come on. I want to have Adam come on. And I just want to talk about the hours of sewing, like for real, like that kind of stuff. And then talk about, I don't know. But anyway, I say all this to say that I have terrible ADHD. Perfect segue. And I don't ever talk about that. And it's like a real thing that like kind of ruined my life. And now I'm better, I guess, or at least I'm trying to be better. I'm the most aware of the fact that I'm crazy now that I've ever been. And so it's a little bit of that's why I can do that stuff. That's why, because my brain is like a 15-lane highway at any given time. And when something funny pops up into my head, I look into all other 15 lanes to be like, does this connect to anything else? Because that's all I do is I just daydream and I just connect things. And so it's just this ability to just randomly connect things to other things. People are like, how did you? And then that's what makes it funny, I guess. I don't know. But I'm glad you like it. Nate has left the end. I think we started talking about this at the top, but Nate has left the end. Nate misedited a couple podcasts over the years. There were a couple of them that we had that were up, and like a couple hundred people had downloaded them, and it had like the last 6 minutes of the call after we ended the podcast on, which thank God. I mean, it was just mostly us being like, God, are we good? I hope we're good. I hope that people like us. And so, cause it's the worst, cause I never the most difficult thing in my entire life is rewatching a video for edits that I've made. It was already torture for me to go through it the first time and make it. I don't want to rewatch it to figure out what's wrong with it. I just want to put it up on the internet. So there have been plenty of wacky goofs that I've made, but hey.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, it's funny because for generally, and my guess is this is true with most YouTubers. After you post it, you never really watch it again. So like, I get questions, very specific questions about a video that I posted like 4 years ago. It's like, what did you do for? I'm like, I don't remember. It's like, oh gosh, I got to go back and watch it to try to answer their question. But it's interesting.
I hear you.
All right. Yeah, but you know what? Now at this point, I think we want to go back a little bit to little Dan. Dan,
let's go back.
Which kid were you in middle school?
I don't remember. If you want to be honest with you, I don't remember middle school. So, but I
think most people try to forget.
What kid it was. I don't know what kid. I still don't know what kid I am.
Were you into puppetry at that point?
No.
When you were young? What got you into puppetry?
Senior year of high school.
Really?
I was Avenue Q. So they had.
And what year did you graduate?
2005.
2005.
From high school. And so I was in the International Thespian Society. And so that year, that November, we were going to a conference in, I think, Altoona or something. It's the state thespian conference. and we had to bring a one act, which we did. Like 3 or 4 people did it, and it was just a little thing that the theater director did. But then we could bring like a showcase, is what they called them. Like every school could do a showcase, and it was just a song that you could do. And so I wanted to do Avenue Q. And I went to my teachers let's do Avenue Q. I will go to the city. I will get a karaoke CD of Avenue Q because the show was out. It had. No, it hadn't won the Tony.
Didn't it win in
huge.
2004?
It was huge. It was crazy how big it was.
So yeah, it must have just gotten. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I was in 11th grade.
Got it. Sorry.
At this point. Yeah, so it's the year I got inducted to the Thespian Society. It's the year before I got inducted because that was part of the points I got to get inducted into the Thespian Society. And then I got the whooping cough. My vocal cords got scarred forever. And to take advantage of the situation, I sang Hakuna Matata as Pumbaa because I had a really raspy voice. But yeah, so they did. So my teacher was like, yeah, okay, we could do it. Let's do It Sucks to Be Me. Maybe they had won the Tony. I don't know. It's not important. What was important was that it was new and this was like right when karaoke, like bootleg karaoke CDs of Broadway shows became big. It was like a thing that they were doing in the mid 2000s. Like, a couple of, kids in NYU got wise to the idea that they could just plug in their synth and record them playing. Like some music majors were just like, yeah, I could listen to the CD and make a piano track of this real quick. And so we did it. We did It Sucks to Be Me, and we did it with puppets. I built 4 puppets with my friend Liz. We went to AC Moore. We bought 4 12-inch styrofoam suns for the middle of solar systems. And we just sliced them in half. We created a complicated system of paper clips, giant paper clips, and rubber bands to make a jaw that would retract. We kind of made like a couple muscles on both sides, and we carved it in like a Pac-Man kind of way so that it would move. And then we wrapped them in fleece, in sleepover blanket fleece. You know what I mean? Like from Joann's, we got a purple and a blue and a green and a mauve one. And my God, they were the size of humans.
My first ones were too.
Built a lot of scale. They were massive puppets. I have an album on Facebook if you both want to look and dig through. There's the puppets I built, and they're the first ones I made, and they're atrocious. By the time we got to Nikki, which was the last one we made, and we made like Nikki a live hand. Like, no, they were all rods. We weren't messing around with that kind of stuff. That was the next thing I made. I made a live hand kangaroo. But we made these things. And by the time we got to Nikki, we're like, hey, wait a minute. Maybe we should make him a little smaller. Because he was the last one we made. And so he was regular. So I don't know where those puppets are.
Yeah. Maybe for hopefully a garbage bin.
But in the process of doing that, here's what's crazy, is that I started emailing James Whitehall back in the day. Because I found like a picture of him working with like Rick Lyon on something. And I was like, how do you make puppets? And he was so gracious and such an a-hole at the same time. And then Rick Lyon Rick Lyon responded to me. I sent him a picture of the puppets I made. And he was like, hey, great, but I don't care. And I was like, okay, Rick. I'm 18 and I'm super excited to be a puppeteer, and the whole, and now I get those emails. Well, I used to, and I relate now, Rick, so I get it. I forgive you. But yeah, it's so we took it. I was Brian. I didn't even puppeteer. I just built them because I was the fat one, so I had to be Brian. And we did it, and the crowd,
they must have gone nuts.
Oh my God. It was a high school auditorium full of weirdo theater kids from all across Pennsylvania. There were like 5,000 of them in this. It was like it was a huge high school high school auditorium. And during all the showcases, all the kids would they were talking and making out or whatever theater kids do. Whatever they do.
We've all
play
seen Glee.
Pokemon
Yeah, come on,
cards.
we know what they do.
Or become, pretend to be a wizard, whatever. We're just all weird. But the music started for It Sucks to Be Me, and the crowd, like almost simultaneously, everyone screamed "Shut up," like to each other, like "Shut up," like. Are they like doing this? This is still on Broadway right now, or what's going on? It was crazy. It was really wild. And, the puppets were the worst looking.
Well, we'll have to get some pictures. Yeah.
But yeah, I can,
Cool.
I have the Facebook album, but as a result of the experience, I asked like the shop teacher at my high school to laser cut me clear sheets of a white acrylic, like 1/4-inch white acrylic in eye shapes. And so he laser cut me like a dozen ovals, like oval shaped eyes, but they were flat.
Right.
They were discs and I was gluing them to a solar system sun covered in fleece. So that was interesting. And then we took teddy bear eyes and we sawed off the pegs and super glued them to the white discs. Yeah, it was wild. I can't even believe. You know what? This is the craziest part. Do you know? Well, you don't know why, but I'm going to tell you why. The reason why the puppets were human sized is because I started with the arms for the bodies. And there was a scene. There was a episode. There was a Good Morning America. They did Fine Line with Ann Harada and Stephanie.
Right.
They sang Fine Line, and Stephanie had Kate Monster. And there's a scene where there's a moment in the song. It's kind of a beautiful moment actually, where Kate puts up her hand and Christmas Eve, like, interweaves her fingers with the puppet's fingers. It's like there's this beautiful moment, and that somehow informed me that puppet hands were the same size as human hands. Later in life, I met Ann Harada and realized that her tiny human hands on her tiny human body, yeah.
Oh my God.
That's funny.
Like I should have looked for like reference of her like holding like a soda can or something, so I could have like but I wasn't thinking with calipers and like metrics. I was
Well,
on a
that's what you
mission.
do.
Yeah,
and it was to make
I'll
these
tell you,
puppets.
I have a similar story because I remember some of the first things that I built too were also Avenue Q replicas. I don't even know if I have pictures anymore. At one point, a couple years into my career, I looked back at them and said, "Oh, those are bad," so I deleted them. And now at this point in my career, I was like, "Oh man, I kind of wish
have the pictures.
Oh, do you really?
I think so.
Oh, good, good. Okay, I'll have to get them from you. But anyway, so what I did was something similar because I looked at a bunch of the photos, and I remember specifically there's one of Rick Lyon like holding Nikki like this, and he had glasses on. So I was like, well, most glasses are probably about the same width. So I measured how wide glasses were, and then I did the math to try to find out the size of the head. However, what I didn't compensate for was the depth, because he was holding the puppet in front of him like this. And we talked about this recently in the podcast, I think. And you wouldn't think so, but that 10 inches makes a tremendous difference. Because then years later, I got to see the show off Broadway, and I got to go backstage and see the puppets, and I was floored by how small they were. I just could not believe it. And then from there, I literally took all my patterns that I had, and I went from 100% to 80%. That was how big of a difference that I made.
Yeah, the next humanoid puppets I made, and from then on, 5T children's clothes has been my go-to.
You're one of those people, huh?
That's been my preferred.
The children's clothes people.
I'm one of those.
I'm highly against. Against it.
Well, here's the thing. I got known as a puppet maker, and I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know how to make a puppet. I knew how to make a pillow. I did that in middle school.
That's the foundation of
sewing. I had done plenty of sewing. Like I knew how to sew. I understood, and I just started doing it. And then a local theater was doing Seussical, and they asked me to make a Vlad Vladikov, and I did. And it was just a big oval pillow with 2 triangles sewn onto it, and then like, 2 pyramids of fabric sewn on for the beaks, and then I just slapped 2 ping pong balls on it. But I don't know what it was about it, but it came out really nice. I just took a 6-foot feather boa, a black feather boa, and just kind of halved it, and then just super glued it all across the top ridge of the puppet, from one wingtip to the other wingtip. And for some reason, because it was just this big flowy feather boa, just that residual motion, that it all just, it actually kind of wasn't a terrible, it was better than my first one. That was for sure. And then it just became a thing, and I just became, and then Disney, I auditioned for Disney, and it was, we
have to talk about that. We have to talk about that. Can we? Or if we can't? If we can't, we can't. Okay, it's fine.
But in all seriousness,
no, well, I mean, there was a particular person. Well, Haley hasn't been on the podcast,
no, not yet.
Right? Haley Jenkins. So when you get Haley Jenkins on, maybe she'll tell you the story, and then we'll ask her about it if you remember, and then she'll probably name the person who was running the audition because they're friends. And then you guys can put 2 and 2 together for this podcast. But no, I just, I was like, okay, I want to do this, but how do I do this? I didn't go to college right away. Instead I was like, cause I'm in therapy, guys. I'm okay. Don't worry about me, but, I'll be okay, guys. I promise. But I didn't go to college, and I was like, okay, I want to do this. How do I do this? And my first thought was, okay, Sesame Street Live definitely has to, they have puppets in it, right? And I lived in Pennsylvania. I lived near Sesame Place. And so I looked into, and then I was like, okay, I know Disney World has puppets too. I've seen puppets at Disney World. So I started going on there and looking at how to audition, how to get in, because they had a college program, but I wasn't in college. So I couldn't get in. And thankfully, I would never have, college program kids all are janitors, and they serve popcorn and stuff. Very few of them are performers.
You got to look like Jasmine.
Mostly.
I auditioned for one too. Man, do I have a story about that, but that's probably for another time.
Oh boy.
But the closest one was Pittsburgh. They were auditioning for Pittsburgh, and I was like, okay, I will go to Pittsburgh. They had a casting call. It was for dancers. It was a whole entertainment casting call, but included in it was puppeteers. And I was like, okay, perfect. So so I was like, but this is Disney, and I want to present myself as not some idiot who's going to just show up. So I'm like, I need to build a puppet. I need to build a puppet, the best puppet I can build, essentially. I was like, I need to do this. And so I went to, I found Project Puppet on a Muppet forum 15 years ago or whatever, 10 years ago, however long it was. And I downloaded the rondo pattern. I bought the rondo pattern, and I remember emailing him and saying, I have this thing I'm doing. It's in 4 weeks. Can I buy these and pay you extra to overnight me the patterns so I can start making this puppet tomorrow? And he was like, wow, you're enthusiastic. Sure. And so Pasha from Project Puppet, who is just an incredible human, incredibly kind, incredibly talented, just a wonderful human. And he has helped me so many times throughout the years whenever I had questions. He was the only person I knew who made puppets. And he had a gateway, he had a portal for people like me because I could pay him for help. And it sounds terrible, but it's not, because YouTube, what YouTube is now, what you're doing on YouTube, Adam, that wasn't remotely a thing.
Right.
Not in any
when
industry,
I wanted to find out how to make a puppet. I remember there was a Swazzle blog about a cat where they kind of step-by-stepped it, how they made this cat. Or maybe it wasn't Swazzle. I think it was Swazzle. It was some cat that they were building. I remember the website had a green background. It was terrible. It was the worst. It just was the worst. But I poured over that time and time again, and man, it's so long ago. But so I got the pattern. I went to Joann's. I got 1/2-inch foam. I didn't understand what barge was, so I hot glued everything. I just I hot glued the foam, and I had a low heat hot glue gun, and I would just put a few dabs and wait for it to cool enough, and then just hold it together and wait for it to get cold, and then move to the next inch. And I burnt the living heck out of my fingertips doing it. And all the seams, I remember all the seams in my puppets were hard because I had pinched the foam tight. You know what I mean? So not that it really made a difference, but I remember I still have a few of just heads that I made that I never did anything with. And if you squeeze the foam, you could feel the hard veins of hot glue.
Oh my God.
And I made this orange puppet. I got some more like a little mini feather boa, and kind of cut it up and made it as eyelashes, and put styrofoam ping pong balls on its head, and then I had leftover boa, so I hot glued it to his armpits because I thought that was funny. And then I found this Cabbage Patch safari outfit, and I put it on him, and I was Mick the Safari Guy is what I called him. And I went to Pittsburgh. I drove 5 hours to Pittsburgh to audition, and I got there, and the guy running the audition was a bad experience, and he kind of made fun of me for even bringing a puppet, and kind of told me to get away from him, and he didn't make eye contact with me for the rest of the audition. It was just this. It was just really kind of crappy what he did. It's fine, I guess. I don't care. I've run into him so many times now, and I just want to smack him and be like, you set me back so many years because you were just the worst.
Yeah. And that man was Frank
it's fine.
Oz.
So look forward to the Haley Jenkins episode where you'll find out who that scumbag is.
Oh my gosh.
No, so it's fine. It's fine. But it was hard. It sucked.
It takes the wind out of your sail. It really does. My experience for that was similar too. I'll talk about it now. I remember the Disney College program. I remember sitting in the Commons at college. I saw the little TP stand says, Disney's looking for people for performers. Looking for performers is what it said. And at the time, I wasn't even into puppetry. This was long before I ever did puppetry either. I was a magician. That was my full-time thing. I was doing magic shows all over Western New York. And
God
thank
bless
you, right? And I was like, they have magicians, and they have people doing balloon animals, and I do all that stuff. I want to go to this. I was doing my contact juggling and stuff. And so I go. It was in Rochester too, so I drove almost 2 hours to go to this audition.
Wow, you were a nerd, weren't you? You did contact juggling?
You did
some Michael Motion stuff?
I did.
Is Michael Motion still alive?
I think so.
Get him on the podcast.
Michael Motion. Oh, that would be awesome, actually. We should try to do that.
You definitely should, and he probably will. Reach out to him. Why
That's
not?
a good idea. Yeah, may as well. Why not? What stories he would have. Oh, my gosh. But anyway, so I go to this audition, and then I get there, and everyone line up. I sign up. I do this. They take me in. They take us in groups. I think it was a group of 20, 25, something like that. Next group goes in. I'm in with this group, and they're teaching us a dance. I was like,
"Yep,
I don't dance," and I was the worst by far.
Yeah, me too.
By far, it was horrible. It was embarrassing. And then they're like, "All right, that's it. Okay, you guys can go now. Next group." I was like, "Wait, done? Like done?" I was like, yep. And they graded all of us. I'm like, I do some other stuff too. Like, can I show you some stuff that I do? I can't say. And then the lady she said, I can't hear anything, and you can't show me anything because it would be an unfair advantage because other people don't get to show me what they do. I was like, actually, an unfair advantage is making me dance in front of these dancers. It's like people should be able to do because it did just say performers. But apparently what I found out, to be a mascot character, or virtually, at least at the time, from what I understand, to work at Disney in any capacity, you have to be a dancer. That was the only way in. It was the bare minimum of criteria. So...
But yeah, anyway, so it's just also everything is movement based. Everything, I mean, every everything is a dance. It's all a dance, and the trick to getting a job at Disney World in the thing you want to get a job in is moving to Orlando. You won't get a job. You can talk to recruiters. You can, unless they want you and they need you. If you want to sell churros at Disney World, you have to move to Orlando before they'll be like, okay, let's process you now. You can go through all the process, but until you have an address in Florida, they don't think you're, so that's the secret. That's the real secret. And as soon as you live there, they hire you instantly,
Yeah.
They hire a lot of people in Florida.
It should be the minimum criteria for
for
both jobs. Living within driving distance, right? Yeah.
Oh man.
Wow.
Right. So so that's what I did. And that was devastating for a long time. I mean, I sound so dramatic. It's not like the end of the world, but for important reasons, for reasons that are just not significant. But like the puppetry was one of the first things I found that I was like, oh, I want to do this. It wasn't. It was my own thing. It was one of the first things that was my thing. I just didn't have a thing growing up. I did theater in high school, kinda, and I just didn't do anything. But puppetry was just great to me. I've always loved puppets. I've always loved puppets. I have baby pictures of me like standing with a Big Bird. It's like it's just been in my bones from the beginning. And I had a friend who had graduated college. This was years later. I didn't touch a puppet for years after that. After that Disney experience, I didn't touch a puppet for years. And then a friend graduated really prestigious theater school. A friend of mine spent tons of money, and he's out there auditioning, grinding the streets, trying to get a job in the city as an actor. And he stumbles upon an audition for ImagineOcean, and he's like, hey, I remember you did puppets. You should do this. You should check out this audition. It's open. It's non-union. So just go. You can audition for it if you want to. And I didn't have to sing. I just had to prepare 16 bars of something, and I was like, oh, okay. I guess. And this was right when I had gotten together with my wife, and we were dating pretty seriously. And I think we were engaged at this point. And so I did it again. I pulled out all the patterns and I built a new puppet for the audition. It was better than the orange one, kind of, but not really. The eye focus was atrocious on it. But I built a new puppet, and I bought a sweatshirt for it, and I threw it in a sweatshirt, and I did Hercules, I Will Go the Distance. And then I had this weird pirate puppet that I made and I couldn't figure out the eye focus on that, so I just gave the pirate 2 eye focus. And so I didn't have to worry about eye focus.
Oh my God, that's
Brilliant.
And then I sang VeggieTales Pirates Who Don't Do Anything with the pirate puppet. And in that room, I got stuck in traffic terribly. I was supposed to be there at like 11, and I ended up getting there like 1:30. And when I got there, Nate was leaving his audition. He was walking out, carrying these 2 whatnot puppets he had. And I met him, and we talked for a minute. And he was just very nice, and I was nice to him. And he was just like, "You'll be fine." And I was like, "Okay, I'm sure you did fine," or whatever we said to each other. And then I went in there, and there he was. There was Johnny. There was John Tartaglia. And I had Avenue Q. It's just a massive part of my life. It was just like, it's like, oh, puppets. Yes. 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 Yeah. Puppets. Yeah. Puppets. And then I was standing in front of them, and I did the thing. I did my 2 routines, and they had a couple puppets in the room, like nice puppets. This beautiful dog puppet that Johnny has. It's gorgeous. And he was like, kind of like Rolf. He was a bag puppet. He had his hand, live hands. And I was like, can I touch your nice puppets? and Johnny, or maybe it was Michael Sean Lewis. No, it was Johnny. He was like, I was like, because I've never touched a real puppet before. And Johnny was like, yeah, I know what you mean. Go ahead. And so I was just feeling the foam and the textures, and I felt the mouth plate, and I felt a grip on the mouth plate. And I was like, oh, that's smart to put like a little like bump on the mouth plate so I can hold on to it. And I was like, oh, that's how they do it. And they deliberated and brought me back in for like a couple minutes later. And Johnny was just like, and it's funny because it's true what he said to me. In a way, it's like either you can do it or you can't do it. You can't.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? Like you know what I mean. I know you both know what I mean, because you can either do it or you can't do it. And a lot of people can't do it. A lot of people can't do it. It's just a thing. It's like people who can like roll their tongue, or like people who taste like, like when they eat cilantro, it tastes like soap. It's just a thing. Some people can do it. And he's like, you can do it. He's like, you have it. He's like, you have it. I'm like, I do. He's like, yeah, you're a puppeteer. You can do it. And I was just like, holy crap. He's like, I'm a pup. I'm like, and he's like, why don't you come back for callbacks? It was the first time, like, I was like, I had associates in theater. I had never been paid to do anything professionally, theatrically, arts-wise, period. You know what I mean? I had done some high school theater, but like I was auditioning for an off-Broadway show, and I'd never been. I had no business there, and they called me back.
And you're being handed it.
They called me back because I was 6.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say, but and you're being handed it by the person who, and from the show that got you started in the first. I mean, it's this wonderful full circle moment. In addition to like the night and day of what your last experience as an audition was, where it was just so, life shattering and just would close you off.
Email my therapist after this podcast, guys. This has been a rough one. This has been
we'll send it right
rough.
to him.
Oh my goodness. No, but if we want to be serious, this is some real talk therapy that we're working through right now, because you're 100% right. It's incredibly cathartic to kind of talk through this, because you're right. It was this great full circle moment where someone who has moved on to a incredibly powerful position in the Walt Disney Company pertaining to puppets told me off and made me feel worthless. And years later, wow, that's really great. Anyway, I don't like that guy. But yeah, and so truth be told, the reason they called me back was because I was 6'2". I was tall, and it was a blacklight puppet musical. And with a blacklight puppet musical, you have to operate in a 2D plane. It's a flat show. Things cannot go in front of each other. And so with that in mind, you're like, everything is moving around. It's like a complicated puzzle box where things are sliding between things and around things. It was an incredibly complicated show to do in retrospect. I cannot believe that I participated in it. But I was tall. And it was me and James Woytall I didn't even recognize him. I didn't know that it was James Woytall, but it was. I had emailed him years before. And looking around the room that I was surrounded with, I was an idiot to be there. Like, if I had known the people I was in the room with, I would have been mortified. You know what I mean? Because it was like Lars. It was Ryan. It was Stacy. It was just like incredible puppeteers and wranglers and makers, people who are ingrained in the business. And I was just walking in there like an idiot. Being like, puppets! I love puppets. But the community is great, and they kind of like welcomed me in. And so I got cast as a promotional person. So I went around the tri-state area as Tank, as Tunk, we called him, because they had promo versions of the puppets that were just they were essentially the first versions that weren't good. And then they rebuilt them later to make them better. And so we toured the tri-state area. We went to fairs, went to like aquariums and zoos, and we just walked the streets carrying the puppets and performing. We learned a couple numbers. It was really fun. I was too fat to wear a shirt from the show, ImagineOcean shirt. They didn't have a size big enough for me. So I had to make my own. I went and like printed some out and like ironed it on, made myself an ImagineOcean shirt. And that first day hanging out with Johnny was like incredible. It was really, really cool. And then months later, they pulled me in as a swing, and I learned a couple tracks in the show. And then it went on tour, and I went on tour with it and went to Singapore and did a bunch of really fun stuff. And then I got my wife pregnant, and so I stopped. And then I had to earn a living, and being a puppeteer does not that equate.
Yeah.
So you started a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Well, actually, I want to go back into it a little bit because, of course, that's where you met Nate. And can you just talk about how you guys became friends? Like, I imagine it didn't start right away in working in that show, or did it?
Instantly.
Wow.
Instantly. It's what Nate and I have is just weird. It's just weird because I was a kid that had to grow up really fast. And so I just had lots of, I ended up digesting the same media that he was, that informed my youth and my childhood. But I was doing it way too early, because Nate's 7 years older than me. 6
okay.
years, he's 7 years older than me. Same age as my wife. My wife is also 7 years older than me. And so Nate and I were digesting these things. I was way younger than I should have been, watching Ghostbusters and, all the movies that I don't know, like just all the, like Caddyshack and Nothing But Trouble.
Die Hard.
And like Saturday Night Live. Yeah. And so, and we just had this common bond of just that. And it just was a weird, I don't know, we just became friends. And he was always just so incredibly kind. He's just always kind. And then we drove the bus together on the tour. And that was like, we like drove the bus because the truck was huge until we got a ticket and fined for operating without a license.
Oh no.
Operating a commercial truck or something. Like we were like, it was just, we weren't proper. Like, I don't know. They didn't know it. No one knew what they were doing. It wasn't supposed to be a touring musical. It was supposed to be a show on Broadway. Anyway, it was fine. But we just we wrote and we would just like listen to podcasts, and we just bonded. And, yeah, it just, we got all the same jokes. And like, I always quote movies badly, and he would correct every time I quote a movie, he always requotes the correct quote.
Yeah.
But what's crazy is there's never a quote that I try to say that he doesn't know the right like it's just this weird
I remember
thing.
him mentioning that in the episode he did with us, how he says like, with movies and stuff, he just has this like photographic memory of a lot of the script.
Yeah, and so he's my heterosexual soulmate, and he's my life partner. So
Awesome.
Yeah, well,
and I was gonna say, and then that touring with the driving the bus together was sort of the proto Getting Felt Up podcast with Dan and Nate talking about puppetry, right?
A puppetry podcast.
A puppetry podcast. Thank you. I'm sorry.
No, the reason Getting Felt Up happened, I don't know what Nate said. I listened to the podcast, but he mostly talked about Mystery Science Theater.
Yeah.
I don't think you guys really talked about Getting Felt Up.
No, very, very briefly.
But the reason we did is because I missed him, because we stopped. The show was over, and he was on tour, and then the tour stopped. He did another year of the tour, and then after that, like I just missed him. He was like a best friend. He was like that best friend you make at camp.
Mm-hmm.
That's like your best friend, like forever. And you're functioning adults now, and so you can maintain the friendship instead of being an idiot kid. And so he was the best friend I made at camp, and and camp never ended. Camp never stopped. And the way that Nate's brain was hardwired to be funny, like fit into, like we were like the Shrine of the Silver Monkey, and we just fit together just in our humor styles into making the silver, just our pieces all fit together because he just riffs. He's like Mystery, he's like the Bots. That's just his comedy style. He's taking what's in front of him and he makes fun of it. Or he pokes fun at it, or he points out why it's ridiculous. And I'm ridiculous. I'm constantly ridiculous. I'm too ridiculous. I say things that are wrong and that I think are correct, but people who know me know better than to believe anything I say. But like the best thing about Nate is that he just takes that and he just is like, he's just like, hey, you're an idiot, in the best way, because that's what he does. And and he knows that I'm not serious when I'm being an idiot, and I know that he's not serious when he's like punching it up, and we're having fun. And so it's just become a great friendship.
That's awesome.
I miss him every day.
Yeah. So how did you get from, wanting to see each other like over Skype or hang out with each other to like, let's bring another person into this and make it a show?
I had a podcast a long time ago. I had a podcast before Getting Felt Up, a Puppetry Podcast with Dan and Nate, and I'm actually thinking about bringing it back, but in a completely different way. It was called So You Want to Be Funny, and we would just interview any comedian who would talk to us. It was me and my friend Ben here in Allentown. And Ben wanted to do like stand-up. He wanted to do comedy. He wanted to do like improv and stuff. And so he started meeting some people through like his like stand-up. And this was like back when like Keith and the Girl was like big. This was back like before, like when Rogan was, this was back before there were comedy podcasts. Like it was back before there was a lot of those things. There were funny podcasts but not what it is today. But anyway, so we interviewed a bunch of people. We interviewed a bunch of people who've gone on to actually, some of them gone on to be insanely successful comedians. And we just were idiots talking to them. But I liked it. I liked doing it. I liked making. I liked creating. I've always liked being creative in that. I used to like pretend like I would write magazines when I was a kid. I used to like write magazines for only myself to consume. You know what I mean? Or I used to like make silly like videos for only me. No one. I would but like I just always like to make and produce. And I've always had that bug in me. And then the podcast gave me that opportunity. And then we were just talking on the phone. We were just talking a lot and always having really great conversations. And I noticed I was a big fan of podcasts, and I noticed there was a big hole in the world where puppetry could be represented. And I was like, let's just start talking to people. And looking back at it, we talked to a lot of really great puppeteers. We talked to a lot of really great creators and people who just have legacies, and it's awesome. It blows my mind that people even talk to us. I think that's what's crazy to me about it. Like, I can't believe that, and it's mostly because of Nate. And I always say that it's always Nate. It's always been Nate who had the connections, who made the friends, who did this little job or did this little thing. And he was so wonderful to allow me to be part of that and meet the people that he met. Because without him, I wouldn't know, Michael Schupak and Paul McGinnis and Laura and Noel and Amy Garcia, and just like I wouldn't have met and known the people that I just are just so incredibly talented, and it's really evidence that if you want to do something and you're passionate enough about it, and you can hustle, because it's hustling. It's not, you can't dick around when you want to. If you want to do this for real, you can't mess around. You have to do it. You have to want to do it. You have to love to do it. You can't be in it to make money. You can't be in it you just want to meet awesome people. And I just love hearing stories, and I love talking to people. I love meeting interesting people and just asking them weird questions. And it just, I don't know. It's great. I'm just, I can't believe, because like I loved Eureka's Castle. It was like the show that informed my childhood. It wasn't Fraggle Rock or Sesame Street or any of that nonsense. It was Eureka's Castle with Batley and Magellan, and just like, I loved Eureka's Castle so much. And then to have Noel in my life later is crazy. It's crazy. So I know people get mad when they say, like, how did you get successful? And I just say, luck. I just got lucky. And people are like, well, that's discrediting people who work really hard for the things. But it's the truth. It's the truth. There's so many incredibly talented. You guys do this podcast better than Nate and I could ever have done it. You know what I mean? And the people you're talking to and the things that you're asking them and the stories that you're getting and you're documenting and the clean, beautiful way that you're making it happen. We were gross compared to what you guys are doing, and it's great.
You know, we've talked about this before, though. It's just different, you know. It's just different, you know. And the way we look at it is almost a spectrum between the three major puppetry podcasts now, between, you know, Getting Felt Up on one side, and then Grand Puppet.
Under the Puppet.
And Under the Puppet on the other side, and us kind of being in the middle, because yours was very, very casual, and Grant's is pretty structured, and I think ours is a little bit of both in a way that works well for us, and I think that's what anyone should ever just do, is what comes naturally to them. That's what'll do the best for you.
Yeah, and I'll say too that I think we have kind of felt the same way, and I'd love to talk a little bit more about, like, you do pinch yourself that you're talking to these people and that they're talking to you, but you realize at the same time, like, at the end of the day, they're just people, and a lot of times they're people who don't get recognized because it's their characters, right? You know, it's you don't know Jim Krupa, you know Batley, or whatever the case may be. So, yeah, it's, you know, can you talk about, like, just some experiences, or how do I want to say this? You know, can you think of some of the, like, bigger takeaways that you guys had from making that show, of just, like, things that you learned about the people, preconceptions that were maybe broken, that you maybe, you know, thought one way about someone, and then you're like, oh my gosh, it was more like that, or do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the craziest revelations that occurred to me during the podcast were all Kirk Thatcher's. It was just Kirk, just because he's Kirk Thatcher. He's
amazing.
Great.
Yeah,
he's great. He's I kind of feel like I have in me the same kind of weird energy that he has in him, and I think that we're all like us weirdos, and I feel like I'm a weirdo like Kirk, and I don't think he would ever be upset that I said that he's a weirdo, because he's a magnificent weirdo, and he is, and so am I, and I think that he just, like, but I think that all of us are. I think that you can't be successful in doing anything unless you're a little bit of a weirdo. But it was just incredible talking to having my daughter put on headphones and sit in front of my computer and talk to Abby Cadabby for like 15 minutes was incredible to me.
Yeah.
It was just like wow. Like, and I don't know if she'll remember it. I have video of it I've recorded, but she talked to Abby Cadabby for a while, and that's cool. Could you imagine if, like, you got a phone call from Bert? It's like getting a phone call from Santa Claus, but Santa Claus isn't real, and Abby Cadabby is. You know what I mean? And it's just, that's the magic to me. It was funny. I wrote my college my high school senior thesis on Avenue Q, and why Avenue Q got away with what they got away with. Why Avenue Q was allowed to say the things they said, which you just did. It was PC culture, like everything it's super PC now. PC comes in waves, but it was super PC back then. You know what I mean? There was like all kinds of war on words, and out of nowhere came Avenue Q, man. And I wrote a paper about how they got away, because the bottom line is, they're not, you forget that they're humans on stage, and the puppet's eyes, they're just these massive, innocent, beautiful things, and that can connect to anyone in the theater. If you're in the back row or the front row, just it was just this perfect, like, they're innocent. They have no prejudice because they're puppets, so they can say these terrible things that, make us think. And I loved that. And so I don't know how on earth it happened, but I managed to get an interview with Jeff Marks as a senior in high school. And I was such an idiot. I don't even know what I asked him. I didn't know what I was doing. I just wasn't. Anyway, it was, and so I interviewed him for a while and talked to him about it. This is when they were putting it out in Vegas. Avenue Q was out in Vegas for a hot minute.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked to him about that. And what's the craziest part about this entire process to me is that I have, and I think this is something that maybe you'll come to the conclusion of later, the two of you, is that I was so enamored by these big institutions around me. Like for the longest time, I was desperate to get Tough Pigs to be like, let our podcast be like your site's podcast. You know what I mean? Like, let's partner up.
Mm-hmm.
Let's make some synergy happen. You know what I mean? Or there have been plenty of, and that's like I never approached them. I never had the courage to do any of that kind of stuff, because I never held myself, in a place where I could, be worthy making content out on my own that people would want. And as my journey as a creator, I realized that I don't need to hitch my horse to anyone else, to be creative and fun and succeed. And talking to all of these creators, the story was the same over and over and over again. It's just, I did what I knew I could do well, and I loved it, and I kept doing it because I knew it was the right thing to do. And puppetry just always felt like that to me. Making silly stuff always felt like that to me. And so it's wild that I've settled into this bizarre thing that I do, but anyway, I'm here now. And so it's great.
No,
but that's the biggest thing I
absolutely.
took away was that, all these people made incredible things, and they worked with really big things like the Muppets and Sesame Street, but they also made incredible stuff on their own, and, to just take risks and to have fun and to just don't care what anyone else might judge about your art. Just make your art, because there's always going to be someone who doesn't like it, and that's okay, because they probably don't like anything. I have talked so much on this podcast. I'm so sorry.
No, not at all.
A total of 16 words. So
no, it's been great, and I think that's a really great place to kind of start to wrap up on, and we'll call this part 1, because it's been so great to talk to you, and we could talk to you forever. But as something that we always ask people when they come on the show is if you have any good puppeteer memories of something that didn't go right in the moment, but now we could kind of look back and just have a really good laugh about it, because in the scheme of things, it is dumb and funny. Pupils popping off, or tripping over Nate Beagle.
There's gotta be one with James Voidle too.
Voidle. The biggest injuries that would the things that brought tears to me there was a number in ImagineOcean that was murder. It was just murder. It was did either of you see it? Have either of you if you want, I have
unfortunately
a 55-minute 720p recording of ImagineOcean if you'd like to see it.
I'll watch it. We may have to.
That'd be great.
We should probably maybe cut this little clip out of it, saying that you own that. Probably.
No, they provided it to me as a rehersal thing. It's like a rehersal thing. So
oh, sweet.
Oh yeah, but you providing it to us is probably not the intent of it.
I'm not going to provide. I'm going to show it to you. I'm going to show you.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay.
I'm not going to give it to you to post or anything, but I could show it to you if you want to consume.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, no, we'd love to see it.
There was a number in that show called Arrows, we called it arrows, which way to go. And it was a number where Dorsal and Tank and Bubbles didn't know which way to go. Like they were all arguing. I want to go this way. I want to go this way. And this big reef floats in, and it's covered with arrows. And the way that these arrows were built was that they were essentially a painter stick wrapped in black gaff, with and then wood glue, like epoxied onto a large plywood arrow. Two large plywood, like they were sandwiched, so that because you couldn't have the texture wouldn't look right with the stick. Because remember, everything has to be flat. And so we had these giant, and then four of us, the four ensemble members, because there's 7 people in the show, the 3 main fish, and then 4 ensemble members. Technically 3 ensemble members, and then my track or Lars' track, which was the seahorse and the octopus. And so we would kind of go in and help, but we didn't do all the ensemble, like the rocks. There was this big, like, complicated rock number that we didn't do, but everyone was in arrows. Everyone was on stage for arrows, and they were, I don't know how much they weighed, probably like 3 or 4 pounds, but they were 14 inches long, and we're all wearing black hoods, and we're all blindfolded in the dark, and the way that we're constantly doing the choreography is that we're intertwining our arms so that the arrows look like they're like just floating everywhere. It's in the staging of ImagineOcean was incredibly impressive, because Little Mermaid in Disney World does it for 4 minutes and everyone's like, whoa, and it's awful, and they need to just close it because it's so old and tired. But ImagineOcean was an hour of it. It was an hour of blacklight puppetry where at no point in time did 2 things cross in front of one another. It was incredible. How do you make transitions? How do people cross each other? It was wild. And that's why you needed someone like me who was 6'2", so that I could elevate things super high, so that 5 people could pass underneath me, and then I could bring it back down and operate inside this floaty ocean thing. But anyway, that number was terrible because all the arrows were always following each other in a line, like some Sesame Street animation. You know what I mean? And so it was 8 individual plywood, 4-pound, 14-inch arrows in the dark, blindfolded, and our temples did not. A lot of people got hit in the head. There were lots of injuries with arrows. Lots of injuries with arrows. But otherwise, I don't think that I've really had any traumatic puppet experiences.
Other than the ones you've already told us.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, you know what? Now, puppeteers, for real, I'm going to have to, deal with that. I'm going to have to explore that in some therapy or something, because that was rough. I've never put in perspective that, so I appreciate this conversation. But yeah, that was,
of course.
I mean, if we want to be real, that was a really
tearful moment.
It was
a
defeating, I was so defeated in that moment.
Deflating, yeah. No, absolutely.
No, and I appreciate you. We appreciate you sharing that, because
absolutely.
I'm sure lots of people have had similar moments.
I just let someone who was miserable and had no authority in, and I mean, granted, what they do is great and whatnot, but they had no authority in any sense to tell me that I was or wasn't capable of puppeteering. They had no authority. And but you don't think that. I guess no one thinks that. And it's not like he set out to hurt anyone, but I've always made it a point to be good to people, especially people who are starting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like I finally kind of have to stop a little bit, because it just happens daily now where I get messages and it's impossible to keep up with it. But I've always tried to talk to creators and go on little podcasts if people ask me to, and do stuff and foster a community, because what's so evident to me now more than ever is that I was doing a stupid little glow-in-the-dark musical with a young kid who's Elmo now. You know what I mean? And I was always kind to him, and I don't have any problem with him. And I don't have to worry about if he has a problem with me, because I was always, and I didn't know. that he was going to be Elmo one day. You know what I mean? Like, I had no idea, you know? And so, especially in the community of puppetry, where you two will be in 10 years is the stories you're going to have in 10 years of the projects you got to work on and the things you got to do and the people you interacted with. There are going to be some cool things just because, you know, opportunities are going to come knocking. And I always think it's important to just be good to the people who are starting with you, because you never know what they're going to end up, what kind of cool stuff they're going to do that you're going to want to do later, you know?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
Ellen's right. Be kind to one another.
Well, at that, can you tell us the best way for people to connect
Guys,
with
I'm
you
so
and
guilty.
watch more
you
of your
guys, like,
content?
I've talked this entire, you know, like we had like one or two guests. On
That's
our
the point
podcast
of
who
it.
Did this, and afterwards we were just like, what a bunch of assholes. They just talked constantly. I'm sorry I said a bad word, but it just for the context of the story, it's just like
it's fine.
that
It's
guy
fine.
loved
And
the sound of his voice. And in particular, it was men for all three
and
times. it happened.
let's be real. We've heard your show, so
Yes.
we knew what we were getting going into this. we
That's
talked
for
to
sure.
Nate. We talked to Nate. We knew.
I always
We know.
bonded over a Kevin Smith podcast called Hollywood Babylon that he does with a radio personality called Ralph Garman, because we have that similar dynamic in that he's the grumpy drunk in a leather jacket, and I'm just the fat wacky one who doesn't really know anything, but will always pretend like he knows to just like keep the conversation going, because I'm not going to remember what this conversation is anyway. So don't stop it. I'm just going to be like, yeah, I've definitely seen Gone with the Wind, so that we can keep talking about it, and I will always agree with you. I'd be like, yeah, absolutely. The ending was crazy. How did it make you feel? And then at the minute I can possibly change the subject, I will, so that I don't have to confirm whether or not I actually saw it, you know? And so that's just that's just how I will always say yes. I'm always moving forward. And so in that way, I'm like Kevin Smith. I've always loved that he does Q&As and someone asks one question and it's a 2-hour Q&A. You know, he just tells a 2-hour story off of one question. And that's just how there's just, so I'm sorry. I just talked too much.
No,
No, not at all.
it's all right.
Oh,
But again, what's the best
Adam,
way for
you're
people
asking
to
me.
find
You've
more
been so
about-
kind
more
to
about
me. You've invited me on your podcast. You bring me on. You're like, so how'd you become a puppeteer? And I'm like, that's a great question, but let me tell you 12 things first before I tell you that. And then about 4 or 5 things until you're like, hey, listen, I really love these stories you're telling me, but how did you become a puppeteer? And I'm like, oh no, you asked me what I was doing next. See, I'm like, not even, I was like, I'll tell you, but first, here's
No,
about
you're
7 other
absolutely
things
right.
I gotta tell you about first. And
No, you're absolutely right. But at that, what's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
can you see, is Figman in the shot? Okay, good.
Yes, yeah, you can see
He's
him.
in the shot.
Yeah.
And do you see the Folk Manus Remy here?
Yeah.
I love Folk Manus. You can find me at Disney Dan. Disney Dan on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. It's just Disney Dan. I'm Disney Dan everywhere.
All right, Dan. Well, we loved having you on the show. We'll definitely have you on again in the future. And thanks so much for being a part of it, talking to us.
For having me be a part of it.